Tony, welcome to the Smoke Trail.
Nice to be here. Nice to
I'm
be here.
super
Thank you for
excited
having
to
me.
have you here and to welcome Tony Denison, who's a very accomplished actor, and um, you share your hometown with my wife, which is she grew up in the Bronx, but you're a little nearby.
Harlem originally, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I'm just super excited to just share some stories and talk a little bit about your journey and what's been important in your life and share it with our listeners.
Okay, my pleasure.
Well, first of all, you've played some really cool roles over the years, and in the cop story that you were in, which was the
The
uh,
original one, Crime Story, you mean?
yeah, crime story, that was pretty cool. I remember that back in the
Thanks.
day.
It was a lot of fun.
And I know you've had lots of roles in lots of TV and lots of movies too.
Yeah, I guess I'm more noted for TV than I am for movies, but I've done my fair share of movies. Yeah.
Yeah, the Gotti profile.
It was called Getting Gotti, and it
Yeah,
was based on the Diane Giacalone, who brought the first case against him, and she would have been successful too. But as the story goes, I mean, there was a juror who was on the take or something like that, and they couldn't understand why Gotti was so, cocksure about everything, and because they had a lot of stuff, but this guy there was never going to be found guilty because this guy was on the take. That's what's I've seen on documentaries and other stuff, and that's what we put inside the movie we did. And what's her name? Lorraine Bracco. She played Diane Giacalone, and it was funny. Lorraine and I, our families, her mom and dad and my mom and dad belonged to the same Sons of Italy lodge in Hicksville, and so I didn't know Lorraine. I mean, I met her once when she guest starred on Crime Story series I had done, back in '86, and also based on a real character. But anyway, I she she then we then did this together, and we got to know each other much more, much more. And her husband at the time was Eddie Almos, who had worked for Michael Mann, who had produced the show I had done, Crime Story. So it was very nice. And we got to be, and we're still, friendly to this day. I mean, we don't hang out because she mostly lives in New York, but
yeah.
I feel I could call her at any time if I, was doing a movie and I'd like her to be in it, and hopefully she'll call me. I don't know, but I wasn't a Nona, that movie they did about the Italian grandmothers, but I don't. But I think what's his name was the executive producer on, it, and certainly he was going to play any role that I would have been right for. I can't think of his name now, but anyway, apparently it was good, well received.
Well, funny story, Nona. So we just watched that like a month ago, and it was a great film, but and really fun, heartwarming, and all that. But I was doing a 72-hour fast,
Oh,
and and we don't watch a lot of movies these days. Like we're just like just not what we do these days. I've watched a lot of movies, but I kind of don't watch a lot these days. And my wife Anitra picked the movie, and she's like, "Let's watch a movie." I'm like, "All right," I'm on a fast. I'm like, "All right, okay." She picks Nona. Are you kidding me? I'm sitting there watching like the greatest like Italian food being made, like like
right,
of
exactly.
all the movies.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. Well, we got connected through Jack Maxwell, who was actually
Great
on.
guy, good friend, great guy.
Yeah, Jack's a great friend of both of ours, and he was on the podcast earlier, and this is actually episode 31. So I think
Oh,
Jack might have been episode 2 or 3.
really?
So
Okay, cool, cool.
yeah, all
I
right.
think
Well,
the guy I was thinking about before was Vince Vaughn. He played
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Anyways, I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, no, all good, all good. But what I love about your story, you've obviously had a really remarkable career, still active. You're still acting and doing things. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Um,
In fact, Jack Maxwell and I, we wrote a screenplay together called Last Stop Coney Island, and we wrote it with really two really good roles for us to play. And now we're trying to get some extra actors that I know who may be able to help us get it going. I'd like to think that of myself would be enough, but apparently, it's not ever enough. Not
Yeah,
ever.
no, I've actually hung out with Jack while he was writing on his little device, parts
He's a
of,
good writer, Jack. He's a good writer.
yeah. And my wife Anitra wrote a couple songs I think that might be part of something if it all works out. So,
Without a doubt. Like I told Jack, I said, when we get this off the ground, I said, in a sense, we're the gods on this project, lowercase g. And we make all the decisions and write all the characters and all that. So if we want our characters to suddenly pick up a guitar one day and belt out a song, they can do it, because we wrote it.
all
So
right. Well, if you guys need an extra who gets killed or something, I'm available.
well, there's mob connection in it big time. So yeah, that could happen. My character could give you a whack or something. You
All
never know.
right, awesome. Well, speaking of God, I think you found a higher power at some point along the way. I understand from your story, and I'd love just to hear from your own words. But you were living the high life and partying hard, and acting and doing what we all do at a certain age, I think. And then something came over you, and you decided enough is enough. And I think you told me 31 years sober.
32 years sober. Yeah, the one thing I wasn't doing was acting, actually. I was gambling. I was running an illegal gambling club, and I was doing like, I mean, insane amounts of cocaine, and I was drinking an equally insane amount of scotch every day. And this was my life for I guess, the last 9 months of whatever that existence, that whole, cabal and not cabal, the whole milieu that I was involved in, which was horrible. But at the time, I thought I was cool. I thought I was the coolest thing on earth. And
Well,
yeah,
now you could be in the NBA, by the way.
what?
Now you could be in the NBA.
Yeah,
You
yeah, the NBA. Well, I
know?
mean, like when that story broke, I thought to myself, "Oh, just now you realize that they gamble?" And I mean, there's been so many gambling movies made, and point shaving and all kinds of stuff that goes on. It's like they just got caught. That's all. I mean, this stuff is like it's so widespread. I mean, the implication is there.
Yeah,
So once in for a penny, in for a pound. And it's like the one thing that you wish, wasn't happening. You wish that there was some purity left, especially in sports. I mean, there's none in politics. There's none, anywhere else in life. But you'd like to think that in sports that there would be, because it's just
yeah,
people, competing at a level, just an athletic level, basically for the love of the game. It's like in my business, like in acting, it's like I do what I do because I love it. I mean, I
yeah.
really, really love it. I mean, I found something in my life that I finally, because I was late to acting. I think I was like 28 years old or something when I got involved in it. And, but once I got involved in it, I mean, it's like, it grabbed me and I was like
Yeah.
hooked. And, this one time, I remember I was on a set of Crime Story and I was talking to somebody because I was having so much fun. And I said to this one guy, this other actor on the show, I think it was John Polito, God rest his soul. He played Phil Bartoli on the Crime Story shows. And I said to him, I said, I don't know. I would do this for free. I said, that's how much. So the sound guy comes over to me and he goes, "Hey, I heard you say that on the tape. You want me to record that and send this?" No, 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 no. But I mean, but he once also said to me, it's, doing this, no matter how hard the work might be that particular day, long hours, because you work a lot of long hours, but in nothing compared to what my dad did. My dad was a truck driver, drove
Yeah.
tractor trailers around Manhattan, for Christ's sakes. We're talking like, these 40-foot tractor trailer jobs.
Yeah.
Nothing I may say the work might be challenging one day because you're tired because you worked a lot of hours. But I was once complaining about same sound guy, and he comes over to me, he says, look, he goes, no matter what you're doing, it sure beats staying home watching reruns of the Beverly Hillbillies, doesn't it? And I was like, oh yeah, oh yeah. And
Yeah.
I actually met Max Baer at an event, and he turned out to be a
Okay.
big fan of mine from Crime Story, and he gave me some advice. He said to me, he goes, take your work seriously, but don't take yourself seriously. He goes,
Yeah.
you'll have a great time on the ride. And sometimes you forget. Sometimes you start to take yourself. I mean, I was never one of these guys who, don't you know who I think I am? But I used to think like sometimes, well, like I'm Time Magazine gave me a great send off, said I was the best villain of the decade, and how come I'm not getting, And it's just sometimes it doesn't work out that way, and sometimes you have to
Yeah,
like you have to sit on a bench. Sometimes no matter how good a batter you are, they take you out of the lineup. It
yeah,
happens in baseball all the time. You know, great ball players you're on the bench. We're taking you out. We're going to shake up the lineup a little bit because people
yeah,
tend to be complacent, even in baseball. And but but a lot of times, then when you get back up to the plate and you're back in the lineup, then it's like, mm, you know. So I'm not immune to making less than stellar decisions or less than stellar choices in my life, but I like to think that when I do make one, I learn from it, and my sobriety, in a sense, helps me do that. I've
yeah,
said before on different interviews that I've done that my wife was here, she'd get a kick out of this because she said, "You always say that," you know. But what I say is that I have blue collar values and a gold collar profession.
yeah,
My mom and dad, I remember when I got Crime Story, and I wasn't even getting paid that much money back then when I first started out. But my mom and dad, it was like the equivalent. They even said, it's like, "Oh, Anthony, it'd be nice if your sisters, I know they're not in the acting, but maybe they can win the lottery too." They looked at it as winning the lottery,
yeah,
know? And it was the only comparison they could make because of the amount of money I was being paid compared to what my dad made driving
yeah,
a track that was like who makes that kind of money,
yeah,
you know? And
yeah.
so
No, well, what I love is two things. One, finding something you love. This applies to anything in life. If you can find something you love that you can make a living at, what a beautiful blessing, right? Like what a wonderful thing to have, and what I wish everyone would get, right? And it's like, but you had to take some risks to get there. And I'm sure people were like,
just as a side note, whoever invented flavored water,
yeah,
I hope they're vacationing right now on the Riviera, just enjoying life because this
well,
stuff was great.
funny story. I wrote a paper at Cornell when I was in college in the 80s about bottled water. And then I started a company in 91 called Cameron Springs, which we sold to Nestle in 2000. So I got in the business, that was pretty early days for bottled water, but
Oh yeah, I'll say.
I'm still working. So it wasn't like a
Wasn't one of these $1 billion sales. Okay, I get it.
no, but it was a cool experience. And my son, one of my second son, is named Cameron after the water company. So I got it. This is a funny little side story. We were negotiating with Nestle, and we were about. I mean, it was about $1 million apart, which it wasn't a giant deal, but it was a big number. And they were like, "Smoke, compared to all the other companies we bought, we're valuing you full value, and they're going through all the reasons why they can't give me any more." And I said, "Listen, I've got a 10-year-old son who's about to turn 10. His identity is tied up with this water company. Like all his friends know it's Cameron Springs. He's Cameron. We sponsor all the school stuff, and it's like it's the kid's water company. I got $1 million of therapy ahead of me." And they laughed at me and they're like, that's not a reason for us. And I'm like, okay, we walked away and we said, no, we're not going to sell it. 6 months later, they came back, they gave us the $1 million.
Oh God, that's great.
Yeah. And he's a good kid. He didn't need the therapy, but
Now, how did you
he,
get to handle smoke? How'd that come about?
I think it's on my birth certificate. So
Oh, so it's legit. Oh, it's not
it's,
a nickname that stuck with you. Okay.
no, it's my middle name, but but uh, we have some American Indian in us.
I was going to say Native American. Yeah.
And there was a fire when my mother was expecting me, so there's a whole story around that and this whole epic story. So we all got kind of an earth name and a regular name. Also, I think my parents were a little hippie-ish, so combination of those things. I can tell you this, it got a lot better after middle school. It's like a boy named Sue.
Oh,
Kids
right.
kids are tough, right? Having a name like Smoke, I was a scrawny kid, and it was it made me who I am, right? It was like made you kind of I had to be resilient. Everyone made fun of it, but by high school I was a wrestler, and grew a little bit, got a little bigger, and it's been a good name since then.
All right. It's a cool name though.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've heard every joke there is, but feel free. All right.
I'll
Well,
try to think of one if I remembered one.
so you were partying hard. You were drinking
Well, what
a lot
happened
of
was
Crocs.
I'll say it this way. I was working in a theater company in New York. It was called the 13th Street Theater Company. And it was on 13th Street between 5th and 6th in Manhattan. And I was doing a couple of plays there. And I was immersed, literally submerged in theater. And and then what happened? Things, I don't know. I just little bit of once in a while because I remember in college I used to snort some cocaine in college, but when college was done, I didn't seek it out, look for it more and more or anything. But I always drank, and I was not one who could really ever really hold his liquor in a sense. I mean, I always went past the when point, and not 9 out of 10 times wind up getting sick, having an upset stomach of throwing up and whatever. But I still like the feeling of the difference of when you suddenly you're like one way, then the next minute you're another way, and that
Yeah.
other way I look forward to all the time. But so I was bored. I was getting bored with stuff, and I wanted more. And then I left the theater company that I was working at because I couldn't the accommodations there. I was living there at the theater and stuff, and it just wasn't enough. So I started working at these blackjack clubs dealing blackjack because I was making really good money and I could work whatever hours I wanted and be available to do auditions and stuff during the day. But one of um, the hazards of being at those places is that you start to, there's a lot of people come in, they have cocaine, and cocaine became, a very friendly commodity that people would, oh, hey, and, or they would sell it to you very inexpensively or whatever. And so a little more and more, I started like doing more and more coke, and booze was always free at those places. So I was just drinking a lot of my Johnny Walker Black, which was my favorite drink. And and then what happened was I decided I can get more of this if I open my own place. So then I wound up getting a guy to come in partners with me, and we opened up our own place. And the next thing you know, we were doing okay. I mean, we were making a lot of money, but proportionately, my intake of cocaine and booze grew exponentially with, how much more money
Yeah.
was coming in. So then it got to the point where he had to leave because he was married and had kids. I was married, had no kids, and he just had to leave because he just was not. I mean, just we were doing so much cocaine.
Yeah.
And when he left, I was doing the place by myself, and then I just went. I mean, it was like on an express train to hell. And
Yeah.
my wife at the time, she left me. We got back together later on. We broke up many years later, but we got, she left me, and I was just a crazy man. And then I hit I sort of a bottom, not the bottom that they talk about in AA, which is the incomprehensible and demoralized bottom, but this was
Yeah.
the bottom more of finances. I had owed money to like very serious people, and
Mm.
I was just a wreck. So I got sober, and it only lasted about like 6 to 9 months, somewhere around there. And then I got rid of the club, got back with my wife, and then I, gave up everything, gave up, like I said, gave up the club and started paying off debts that I owed and stuff, and got back into the acting business, and all that stuff was going all right. And then I caught a break, and I got Crime Story about a year and a half later, and I got Crime Story. Next thing you know, my whole life turned around. I was in Chicago shooting the series, and and then we went to Vegas, and then subsequently, I've always wanted to live in LA because of the weather. So when we were in Vegas, I said, "Look, we don't have to go back to New York. Let's go to Los Angeles." So we went to Los Angeles. We moved to Los Angeles. Loved it here. Still love it here. I've been here since 70 since 86, 87, and because I just love the weather. I mean, today
Yeah.
it's like 80 degrees, and
Yeah.
like yesterday it was 80 degrees. And this is
Yeah. We lived in Westlake Village and in
oh yeah, it's nice there.
Ventura before we came here to Sedona.
Yeah, Ventura is very nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, so so that was it. So I just commuted to Las Vegas to do the show the second year, and then the show got canceled. It was sad because it made no sense why it got canceled, but it did. And then I was like, hustling around, getting more job. I got different stuff, and then I just like I said, I went back to drinking. I didn't go back to drugs ever, thank God, but I went back to drinking, and then little by little, I just got to be so removed, emotionally and
Yeah.
physically from the entertainment industry that even though I wasn't running a gambling club, I was just again isolating. And then I hit my bottom then in '93. And this time that was that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralized bottom that they talk about. And I knew I couldn't do this anymore. So this is like 9 years later
Yeah.
after I'd left New York. And then that's it. And then my whole life turned around when I finally, went to my first meeting, and then I started to understand things that were missing in my life, and that didn't stand for anything. Like they say, you either stand for something, or you fall for everything. And I was falling for everything. I mean, I didn't have any beliefs. I didn't really believe in anything. And then
Yeah.
I started to build a foundation. Albeit it was a spiritual foundation, but it was a foundation. It wasn't religious because I'm not even remotely religious, but it was a spiritual foundation. And I started to say, eventually, over the course of the first 6, 7 years of my sobriety, I learned that it's more important to be happy with who I am and not what I am or what I have. And when
Yeah.
that started to take hold, even and I lost everything. Like when I was about 6 years, so I lost everything I had. My wife and I split up. I lost this beautiful home I mean, gorgeous home in the valley, overlooking the whole valley and the whole, all that stuff, and no money, and a month or two from complete and total bankruptcy. And so little by little, I just started to learn that there were more important things in my life than stuff. Stuff is great. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I like stuff. Who doesn't like stuff? But it
Yeah.
can't be the motivator. Can't be the progenitor of everything I
Yeah.
do.
It's the attachments to the stuff that has to go, right?
Yeah, the attachments have to go. But to want it, it's okay to want it. Just like you say in Sicilian. When my mom and dad are Sicilian, like statasi, take it easy, take it
Yeah.
easy. And so the more I take it easy, the better it got for me. And then little by little, like after about 7 years, my career started to come back to me. I started to get more work, and then I got the closer in Major Crimes, and then I worked for the next 14 years, making 10 times what I made before that happened. But
Yeah.
before that happened, I had to go to the bottom, an emotional bottom, and say, okay, none of that stuff matters. And it was hard to say. But it didn't. What was
Yeah.
the most important things to me was happiness, love, happiness, and self-respect. Because at the end, I think I said this already. I use this expression a lot. But at the end of the day, all you got is your dignity. You know,
Yeah.
it's all you got is your dignity. And if you lose your dignity, what the hell? What are you worth?
Yeah.
I mean, then you're anybody's fool. And I mean, when I was doing drugs and drinking the way I was, I, I, I I probably knew how to spell dignity, but I wasn't practicing it as a verb. It was just, a noun, you know.
Yeah.
and and then life has changed. I mean, now nobody does this stuff perfectly, but I like to think that I'm a hell of a lot better off emotionally than I was, before I, hit that bottom. And well, that's sort of second bottom, the spiritual bottom of not having anything.
Yeah.
And so I'm appreciative of that. I mean, like right now, I'm sort of going through a period of time where not much is happening again, and I'm thinking, oh my God, not again. This is crazy. But I'm just the difference is, I have a little more money in the bank than I did then,
Yeah.
you know. But it's not a never-ending supply of money. I've got to work. I've got to do something. So, interestingly enough, Jack, the story idea that Jack came up with, and then we collaborated on the script. Um, it's pretty good. And I think we're going to be able to sell it. So, I mean, again,
Yeah.
it's not going to be like, we're not going to have like the seven dwarfs coming with buckets full of gold and dumping it, in the front door of my house, but it'll be some good scratch. So,
Yeah. No, I think I'm excited about it. I think it's going to be great. You guys are It's perfect. It's a great story. I've heard little pieces of it, and as Jack was working on it with you, and
All right.
that's awesome. Well, you had something, maybe different, but something of the same. Like you heard a voice at that point when you were at kind of rock bottom. Will you tell us that story?
Yeah, the night that I decided to get sober again in 1993. Like I said, I had everything. I had this beautiful home. I had, uh, my beautiful wife and our cats and nice cars and the view home, which in California, oh, you got a view home, ooh, and we had all that. But at the end of the day, it was like it just was never enough, because I was addicted to the stuff.
Yeah,
And I wanted more and more and more. How come? Why not? Why can't I? And so that one night, I was like I said, I had been drinking, but this one night, because the only thing I could drink at that point was wine. My this big, wooden leg capacity for scotch was gone.
yeah,
So the only thing I could drink was wine. And one night, on just three glasses of wine, I went crazy. I mean, certifiably insane. I mean, the fact that I didn't get my lights knocked out by somebody or get arrested or, get into a bar brawl is beyond me. And,
yeah.
but anyway, so I got back home and I remember I was like, I walked to my backyard because I was just still like this, like crazy. Like, why am I getting mine? Things weren't happening for me. And I basically sort of collapsed, next to the pool, in the backyard. And I'm lying there. And I remember I was looking up at the moon. It was a full moon. It was March 8th, 19. It was March 7th. I'm sorry, March 7th, 1993. And I looked up at this full moon, and I was just looking at the full moon, and then I just went, oh, like a werewolf. I was howling at the moon like a werewolf. And then two coyotes howled back. And I thought, oh my God, I've become a savage. Wild animals know what I'm saying.
Spoke their language.
Oh, hang on, Tony, we'll be right there. We'll bring you some stuff. It was crazy. And then we lived on an easement because I said it was like a view home, and there was like four homes on the easement. So I hear this voice so clearly because I started crying. I was like convulsing for like 10, 15 minutes, just slobbering cry. And then I heard this voice, and the voice said, "It's over. You're done. You need help." And so
Yeah,
I looked around like this, thinking it was my neighbor because I thought I woke him up because it was at this point it was only really like maybe 8 o'clock at night, you
yeah,
know. But I was loud, and it was dark because it was March, so it was winter, and well, whatever winter is out here, But anyway, and it was nobody there, and I just said to the voice, I said, "Okay." That's all I said. Okay. And I tried to stand up and I could not. I could not stand. I had to crawl on my hands and knees because I was still so wobbly. And this is like now 2.5 hours later, maybe 3 hours later. And I crawled into the house and I made a call to a guy I knew who he had about 3 years of sobriety. But later on, I wound up sponsoring him. And anyway, so I gave this guy a call, and then he was the one who said to me, let's why don't we go to a meeting? And I was like, I didn't want anything to do with meetings. Nah, I'm done. What do you? I did that in New York. It's nonsense. And he goes, all right. And then he asked me if I could stop drinking for 90 days, and I said, well, I did it once before. He goes, well, try it again. Okay. So 90 days later to the day, I'm out having dinner with the same guy. And he said to me, "How you doing with the no drinking?" And I said, "Well, I said, I was like trying to be coy, and I said, I think it's like 90 days today." And I knew that because I'd marked every day off on my calendar. And he
hmm
said, "Well, if you hadn't had a drink, let's go to a meeting." And I got to tell you, Smoke, I was scared to death because I thought I was going to have to go someplace and say, "Hi, my name is Tony, and I suck at life, and I'm a failure, as a man, and I'm stupid, because look what's happened to me." But I remember how I felt that night in my backyard, that howling at the moon and crying and just feeling like I had no soul, nothing, substance. And
yeah,
I just said to myself, I would rather go someplace and have to sit on a stool and wear a dunce cap, in front of men and women or whatever it was, than ever feel that way again. So I said, all right, let's go. So we went to a meeting, and it was a place out here. It's called the Original Radford Meeting. So we went to this meeting, and my life changed that day. I went in that meeting, and everything changed. Everything changed, and I started. Like I say to people, I have like certain heroes in my life. My mom and dad, God rest their souls, they're my heroes. It's two wonderful people. My mom came to this country when she was about 2 years old, so effectively she was an American. You know,
Yeah.
my dad came when he was about 11, 9, 10 or 11. But again, they were still children, and they came to America. And but the stuff that they helped me with, even though we were loggerheads a lot of the time, um, but when we finally found peace with one another, I have to say that like they're the most influential people in my life.
Yeah.
But so they're like my main heroes in my life. But I have other heroes. Like I have heroes like Shakespeare and Charles Dickens and Mark Twain. I mean, these are like real heroes. And and I but there's a hero that I have, and I haven't looked at his stuff in a while, but Joseph Campbell. And
Yeah.
he writes about, the hero has 1,000 faces, and basically
Yeah.
the journey of the hero, the travails and the traveling that and the travails that face this journey, this hero. And I like to think that all of us, the people especially who decide to get sober or stop drinking, go
Yeah.
temperate, so to speak, and do it for the rest of their lives, or do it for as long as they can, even if they're not working a program, that they get to a point as a hero, okay, that um, everything in their life, all around them, all the known stuff around them, just sucks so bad that they say to themselves, I can't take this anymore. I got to get out of here.
Yeah.
And off in the distance, they can look off in the distance, and it may seem dim or not legible or clear, but something's there, like a sound or a light or something. And they say, you know what? I don't know what that is out there, but it's got to be better than this. Just got to be better than this. So
Yeah.
we start making that movement towards men and women, especially in recovery. And I'd like to think that the minute we take that first step, we become heroes.
Yeah.
Now, caveat to that is that we become heroes, but when night falls and a new day comes upon us, whatever we were doing yesterday to be heroes, is only a reference. Today we have to create that heroism all over again. We have
Yeah.
that to look back on. Like I always say to people, in the rooms, I said, uh, they go, you have 32 years of sobriety. I said, I have 32 consecutive years of consecutive yesterdays. And of those
Yeah.
32 years of consecutive yesterdays, there's a lot of things I learned and I saw and observed and tried and done that I can borrow from. But as far as like today, Friday, for me and you, it's it's the time is coming at us in the same time. So
Yeah.
whatever it is that we're experiencing is all new, and so it behooves us to dig down and become even more heroic again. And
Yeah.
sometimes we do it piecemeal, and sometimes we do it, with the largesse, and but whatever ways we got to do it. Otherwise, we're
Yeah.
just unhappy. I don't
That's
want to.
beautiful. I didn't do a program, but I also had a voice that spoke to me. It was on plant medicine, but I was having an argument with myself, and you know, I was never a drinker like that. I was a heavy drinker, and I could always handle it. I could drink all night, go to dinners, drink, and then I could wake up in the
Yeah.
morning, work out, go do business, do it again. But I did that for a long time. That's probably why I drank as long as I did because I could. But at some point, I just had this, discussion with a voice, and it was like, "You're done," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. What? Maybe I'll just cut back." And I had all this pain, and then as this went on for like an hour, and then I was like, "All right, I'm done," and then the pain went away, and I stopped. And it's been 2.5 years for me, but the clarity of my thinking, the my brain after about 75 days was like, whoa, like it was a totally different experience. But one of the things that I experienced, and I don't know, when you said you love that feeling, So what I realized after is when I went through my journey, which was facing a lot of trauma and childhood stuff and cleared it out and a lot of shadows, I realized that I had a fan going back on. It was like anxiety, but it was like a fan going on in the back of my head all the time. And when I drank, it went away. So it was like, oh, I'm back to me when I would have a drink. I would be like, oh, now I'm clear. But the fan went away when I dealt with my trauma, my shadows and stuff. And when I cleared that stuff out, I didn't have the fan anymore, and there was just no need. So it was just kind of a natural thing. But
Mhm.
we're all on our own journey. But I think the power of the groups, like the 12-step group, is incredible. I mean, there's a guy named David Hawkins who wrote Power versus Force. I don't know if you've ever experienced
No,
it.
sounds like a great title.
I'll send you a link, but he mapped consciousness, right? So from the low lows when you're in depression and all the way up to, where the Buddha was and Jesus and the high enlightened people are. And the at 540 in his scale, it's unconditional love. And that's a very high level. It's a log scale, so it's a very it's a
Right.
very powerful field. AA, the 12 step groups calibrate at 540. So it's the power of that field of unconditional love that lifts people up who join it, that help them sustain it. And which is why when people stop, a lot of people, if they haven't done a lot of the work to get their own consciousness up, if they stop going to the meetings, they revert back to drinking, because if you get away from the field, it's like it helps hold everyone up who's in it. It's like loving hands of God around you.
Huh. 540? I missed
540,
it.
yeah. Yeah, on this scale of consciousness, it goes from 0 to 1,000. So if you're in low depression and at your worst, you're in the you're 50 or 100 or but it's logarithmic. So as you get up past 200, you're in positive territory. At 540, you're in unconditional love. Buddha, Jesus, Krishna, the great founders, avatars of religions were at 1,000.
Yeah, because I believe in unconditional love is who and what my higher power is about.
Yep,
It's
that's
not, there's no gender to my higher power. I mean, that would be limiting my higher power if I gave it some kind of a gender or definition or form.
it's
But
more of an energy field.
yeah, it's an energy field based on a feeling that I get. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're tapped into source. That it's God, it's source. Well, lots of names, right? I
Right.
love one of my friends calls it cosmic heart.
Cosmic Heart. Yeah, that's a nice title.
Yeah,
Do you attend meetings?
no, but I'm hugely supportive of it, and I do a lot of spiritual work, a lot of meditation. I read a lot of material. I'm inundated. I moved to Sedona because of this, so like I'm doing a lot of consciousness work, and you know, so I'm lifted up. I'm lifted up every day. I'm in a super high field, but I'm been fascinated as I've learned about it, because it is that energy field that holds people up, and we give it to each other. Someone told me, as we heal ourselves, humans become the medicine to each other. And it really works that way. When you heal yourself and you're there lifting others up, you're the medicine for those people that need lifting. And that's true of like all of society. I mean, we're all in this journey alone, and we're in it together. And as
Right,
as we get ourselves right, we help each other.
right, right.
Yeah,
So it's interesting. 540. I didn't know about that. I mean, I know that like I'd studied the Kabbalah for a while,
yeah,
and they talk about the 10 levels of consciousness
yeah.
in Judaism, that and like the number the number one is a thing called, I think, Keta. And when you
Mhm.
reach that place, that's like ultimate awareness, ultimate knowledge.
Yeah.
But along the way, like, I forget what number, like number 5 or 6 it was on the chart. But again, that was a place where like you had a greater chance of attaining, you know, uh, but you could go beyond that. But it just to get to even to like 6 or 5 was like it was some real rock scaling there, real climbing,
Well,
mountain climbing.
well, Earth is this, I think of Earth as like this is Earth school. This is school for our spirits, for our souls.
Right.
And it's real purgatory. I mean, we have heaven on earth and we have hell on earth. And the reason it's Earth School is that we have the opportunity in human life to increase our consciousness level and to attain those higher levels. And the that Kabbalah stuff, I'm not as familiar with it, but I've read part of the Zohar, and it's the same in all these religions. All the true spiritual texts talk about the same things. And
Yeah,
as you raise and as you clear away your own baggage and you get right with yourself, you can. Our natural state is love. Our natural state is
I agree. Totally
bliss.
agree.
It's the stuff our ego minds put in the way. It blocks it, right? It like blocks the sun, and when the clouds go away, it's bliss. It really is. So
Well, I remember when I guess I was about 8 years sober. So it was during that period of time when nothing was happening for me. And I remember I used to argue with people all the time about the Bible, and so I decided, let me read the damn thing. I never read it really. And so I read the Bible. I read it like about one and a half times. I started reading it again a second time just to sort of polish up what I read before. And I said, oh, one and a half is fine. Uh, you know, and so when I read the Bible, I came away from the Bible and there was so many different things in there, so many metaphors. Because it's not like I want to argue with anybody whether it's the literal word of God or not. It's like, oh, if that's what you believe, fine. Good for you. Just don't beat me
yeah,
over the head and tell me I got to believe that.
yeah,
But there's some wonderful things and there's really great metaphors and there's some really great stories. And one of the most interesting stories I thought was because they said, that Jesus said he came forth. The name is really not Jesus. That's a Latin thing. It's Yeshua was his name,
yeah,
but he came forth to change not one yod or one tittle of the law. Those little marks on the Hebrew letters, and uh, and so they said to him one day. I don't know if it was in Matthew or maybe it was Luke. They said Rabbi, and they referred to him as Rabbi because when they did make some of the translations in the Aramaic and the Greek and some Hebrew, they would refer to him naturally as Rabbi. And so they said, Rabbi, what are the greatest commandments? And he said, he's credited with saying, obviously written down so many years later, but that the greatest commandment is, to love and honor thy Lord thy God with all thy, heart, mind, and soul, so to speak. I know I'm paraphrasing it. And then
yeah.
he said, and the second one is to love one another. And having just when you just freshly read the Bible, that's not a commandment. That's not one of the 10. So I said, oh, so that's like the 11th commandment, love one another.
Yeah.
And so like I said, I started looking back at certain things in my sobriety and in my life, and I realized that love was a verb. And
Mhm.
it was the thing that was missing my whole life, loving myself,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
transmitting that love to others, because the primary purpose is to stay sober and help another alcoholic to achieve sobriety. So one of the ways you do that is by loving the other person that you're helping, but you got to first love you, because how can you
Yeah.
talk about, you know, all the benefits and the joys of being sober if you're not taking care of yourself? The whole idea of the oxygen mask, put it on yourself and then assist the people next to
So
you.
true, Tony. So 540 is unconditional love. 600 is traditionally what the traditions call enlightenment,
Right.
and in Christianity that would be the Christ consciousness.
Consciousness. Uh-huh.
In Buddha in the Buddhist tradition, it would be the Buddha mind. But it's basically seeing the divinity in yourself and everyone else.
Right.
So we are God. We are God manifest in flesh.
Right.
And once we recognize that, but you can't recognize it in everyone else until you love yourself. You have to get good right with yourself.
Right. Well, Jesus said also, uh, he says, ye are like gods. If you
Mhm.
tell one mountain to move from here to there, and it'll be done. But he never says it'll be done in an instant. And
Right.
and then I'm thinking to myself, ye are like gods. And so I know that from reading other people like Emmett Fox and
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis and people like that, they say that the metaphors in the Bible, like troubles, I mean, mountains, signified your troubles.
Yeah.
So Jesus was saying, or okay, Yeshua was saying you could tell one group of troubles to move from here to there, and it'll be done. But he never says it'll be done in an instant. But
Right.
but if you have faith like a mustard seed, and you look at a mustard seed and you go, that's all the faith you need. But it's got to be like concentrated. Can't be any
Yeah.
20 below. Can't be any space in that space inside that seed. It's got to be compact.
Absolute devotion, absolute faith.
To the
Yes.
Christ consciousness.
Yeah.
And I always thought about that. I said, oh, so he's saying, that's why, like when they say, oh, that Jesus was God, and it's like, I don't know, man. I mean, I'll grant that the prayer is called Our Father, not my Father, and so like we're all children of God, and
Yeah.
he just happens to be one who's, like you said, has expanded his consciousness to a
Yeah.
level that you think, damn, man, you could turn water into wine. Yeah, why not? I mean, people say to me, "Oh, you believe that stuff?" Sure, I believe it. Even before reading the Bible, I believe that man is capable of so many incredible things. Our minds are like, holy
Yeah.
moly! I mean,
And our awake mind, right? Our conscious mind is, it might be, I think it's even less, but they say 5% of our actual mind. So we have our giant capability, which is in our subconscious, in the Eastern religions, they call it the karma, but it's our subconscious mind is very all powerful, right?
right,
So our awake mind is this little piece of it. And as we clear away the debris, we get more access to that bigger mind. Uh,
right.
it really is true. But it's funny, I'm with you on this. Like I wasn't religious or spiritual, and when I started on this journey, I was like, oh, I don't know anything. I literally had big gaps. Like my wife grew up in Catholic school in the Bronx, and that whole thing. So she called herself a recovering Catholic, but she had a lot of information. Like she knew a lot from school, right? From like growing up that way. I didn't. So I read everything. I read a bunch of Christian stuff. I read a bunch of the Buddha. I read the Bhagavad Gita and the Upanishads and some of the
Did you
the
try
Hindu stuff.
reading? Did you try reading the Quran?
I've tried a couple times. I haven't gotten very far.
Me neither. I've tried twice, and I get in there, and it just seems so. It just seems violent, and I mean, it just kind
Well,
of like it seems like
but
it doesn't have any patience for anything else.
interesting story about that. The Quran actually calibrates at 700, so it's quite integrous. But Muhammad, he calibrated over 700 in his life, but then we think something happened. He had a stroke or something because when he turned 39, he dropped under 200 to non-integrity, and he led wars, right? He led wars. So there's a lot of misinterpretation of the Quran because of their founder ended up being a warlord too. So there's
Right,
a lot of, this is not a popular thing to talk about, but it's a
right.
yeah, there's a whole body of work on this I'm happy to share. But what's cool is that, like you said, like I'm not one who like reads everything and says, oh, verbatim, but the things that are in common across all these religions are the core truths. And you know, the thing is, are the ones that have kind of fucked up religion, right? You
Exactly.
you had the pure teachings of Jesus, you had the pure teachings of the Buddha, you had the pure teachings of Krishna and the Kabbalah. But then you've got like the Council of Nicaea in the 400s. They got together and they voted on what went into the Bible. Well,
Right. And what didn't go in?
yeah, and so some things got left out, some things got put in. I mean, this not everybody will like this, but Revelation is not integrous. Like that book in the
Yeah.
Bible is not part. It actually calibrates below 200. So if you throw out, so Christianity went from the 900s down to 600 and down even below that. But if you throw out Revelation, then and you just talk about the New Testament, you actually get the calibration of the Bible goes from 600 to like 850. So, it's fascinating to me. Like I love like the fact that you can even, look at it this way, but it's like, look, the core teachings are what you don't even need to read all this stuff. If you understand that it's about love, God is in all of us, and everyone we look at, it's God looking back at you. And if we treat everybody that way, what a world it is, right?
Well, have you read anything by a guy named um, Father Anthony DeMello?
Yeah,
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 he was
I like
cool. I
it.
liked him a lot. I mean,
Yeah,
this
because he really blended Christianity, Catholicism with the Eastern stuff,
Eastern
and
religion, yeah.
yeah,
In
yeah,
fact, somebody told me that who knew of him pretty well. They used to say to him, Anthony, when you go out there and you do your lectures that that the church was paying for, he goes, could you mention Jesus once in a while?
yeah,
Because he would talk about the Buddha and
yeah,
and Krishna and all this other stuff, and so and then he'd say, oh, and Jesus, you know,
yeah,
because I mean, I don't know. Again, at the end of the day, it's what's his name, Wayne Dyer. You know Wayne Dyer.
sure,
Wayne Dyer said there's the I do some meditations of Wayne Dyer, and his thing is like all the ah sounds in meditation, like they all come from the same, like all the names of God come from
yeah,
that same sound, like God,
yeah,
Buddha, all that's basically awareness. It's like almost like when they say your ha moment, aha, and that's
yeah,
basically what it is. It's and at the core, think of all religions is that they're brought together by like-minded people, and and the thing was that they love each other because they all have like this symbiotic mind. They're all like, oh, okay. But the ones that where they get a little screwed up is when they decide they're going to go and resonate at that 200 level, like you were
yeah,
talking about, and go
yeah. Well,
against somebody else.
and when the church took over the Roman Empire, it merged with political power, and
Right.
so the teachings changed, the motivation changed, and so it had its start days and everything else. I was just in Cologne, Germany. I'm working on a deal. I'm selling a company in California to a company in Europe, and we were in Cologne a couple weeks ago, and I got to go to the big cathedral there, which is
Yeah.
magnificent. It's
I don't
incredible.
think I've seen it, but I've seen pictures of it.
Yeah, they have two of the three magi relics there. Like the three wise men, like two of
Yeah.
the relics are there. It was pretty
Wow.
wild. But I asked the lady, I said, we took the tour, it was really amazing. And I realized like I've read a lot of Meister Eckhart. I don't know if you ever read any of his stuff,
That
but
name sounds familiar. Yeah. Yeah.
he was a really enlightened uh, Catholic. I guess he was the Franciscan, but his ministry was there in Cologne at that around the time when that was being built. So, do you have anything from my Stericart? She said, "Oh, I think we do." No one's ever asked that, and she said, "Go around to the back of the cathedral, and up in the window is Meister Eckhart's hat." So I went around there and I took a picture of the window. It's kind of way up high, but he was one who was basically the church got mad at him because this is like during the time when they were persecuting people and all this stuff because he recognized Christ consciousness, which is recognizing divinity within. It's within all of us, and it's just once you get to a certain level, you see it.
Right.
Um, anyway, I'm a huge fan of his work, but it was kind of cool to see his hat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just it's somehow like a lot of churches or a lot of religions, they would rather you focus on the things that they want you to focus on and not the things that you choose to focus on. And
Yeah,
it becomes and it's like it's more important. It's like I said, like when Yeshua was killed on the cross, okay? I don't doubt that that happened, okay, because the Romans came there to just massacre these people. I mean,
yeah,
what's his name? Pontius Pilate. It was the equivalent of sending, like Heinrich Himmler to
yeah,
to that part of to Judea, and I find it at the best, at the very least, laughable that he would say, I find no fault with this guy. He was sent there specifically to kill Jews. I mean, so all of a sudden he's going to say, oh, this guy is special and I don't know what to do with him. No, I mean, so when they went there to figure out what happened, Anthony of Egypt and Gregory, to put they're eventually leading to the Council of Nicaea, their findings, they were there and they go, well, what are we going to do? We can't tell Constantine that the Romans were responsible for all the mayhem and the
right,
massacre. Oh, so we're going to say the Sanhedrin, that was their fault. They said, give us Barabbas, which there was no. I mean, there's nowhere in anywhere anybody's laws anywhere where the Jews had the right on the night of Passover, like as if the Romans would say, "Oh, let's celebrate Passover with." They didn't give a flying fuck, you know. And it's like, "Oh, give us Barabbas." So the Romans did because why? Once the Jews said, "Okay, you go ahead and kill him," that they literally massacred this guy. I mean, flayed him with whips and stuff, and then that wasn't on the behest of the Jews. So this
No,
whole thing, and they have all this stuff that they get caught up in, and you want to say, God Almighty, man. I mean, it's like anyway. I mean, I can go on and on about this stuff, but it's I think at the end of the day, it's like really important for people. When I run into people, like I know this one evangelical guy, and he's whacked. I mean, he's just whacked. And I say to him, look, I said, there's so many things in the Bible. I said, this is something that happened 300 years after Yeshua was crucified. I said,
yeah,
who was alive to tell him where the Via Dolorosa, where the Trail of Blood was located? Who? Nobody was around. They were already like 2 generations gone. I said,
yeah. It was like the
some
desert
non-believers are going to
people.
keep track of it?
Yeah, like the desert people. They all calibrated really high, but they would tell the story. It was all verbal, right? Until it got
Yeah, it was
written
all
down.
the oral tradition. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's really fascinating to me. But all those women who were there at the cross, all the disciples scattered, right? They
right,
were hunted and they were fearful or whatever. They all ran. Um, all those women who were there at the cross who witnessed the resurrection, they became enlightened at the cross. There's something called transmission, right? When you get with a very enlightened teacher, there's a transmission of energy which
right,
your energy field can receive. You can't necessarily activate it until you're ready and you've done all your own work. But all these women that were there, and there were probably a lot more than just a handful. There was probably a lot of women there. They became enlightened, and they were able to see his spirit leave the cave and come out, and the resurrection. They witnessed it because they were enlightened,
right.
and that's how Christianity spread. Really, like all those people that got enlightened from Yeshua, spread it. So it's really fascinating, but it's not. Again, there's no true religion. There's no God never said go kill each other. Never said do any of this stuff. So anything
Not
in
a
the
not,
name
not a chance.
of religion that is about war, is about hurting anyone else.
Well,
It's
that's why they have the big schism between the Christians and the Catholics.
yeah,
When in the one version of the Bible is "Thou shalt not kill," and the other one's "Thou shalt not murder," because
right,
you can't be killing. We got to have a right to go kill people because if we don't like them and they're not believing in our haha moment, we
right,
can have the right to want to slaughter them. And so, but if we can't kill anybody, then what good are we? You
yeah,
know, and so it's just so funny. But I mean, again, if somebody comes along, and I've had some real theological debates and discussions with some high-ranking people,
yeah,
in different letters, in religious studies and stuff. But no one yet has been able, nor have I ever been able to convince them, but I've left them with questions that they
yeah,
could answer, but no one has been able to convince me that that it's the literal word of God. But if you believe that, good for you. I mean, if your life is happy and you don't want to beat somebody over the head because of it, believe all you want. I mean, what difference does it make to me? But the minute you differentiate from the norm, from what apparently are the teachings of the Holy One,
right,
then you lose me. You just lose me.
yeah,
So
yeah. If we stick to love yourself, love your neighbor, love your brother, do no harm. There's some really basic natural law that is common across everything, and it's those are the truths. So,
that
uh,
breathing you hear is my dog Dolly. She came in. Dolly,
ah,
Dolly, come here, come here.
Dolly,
Dolly, come here, come on, up, come on, up, Dolly, up,
hey
Dolly.
Dolly.
Yeah.
I would
So
have invited Bodhi, but she's our 10-month-old Aussie Doodle. She's my trail
oh,
dog.
she's 4 years old, going to be 5 in March. I mean in
Awesome,
February. Yeah,
awesome.
I love that little creature.
Well, Tony, I so appreciate this conversation. It actually went in a direction I didn't even expect, but I love your knowledge of it and just your open mindedness about everything. And I think the message is really clear. And if there's someone out there who's, thinking about, what's next, I think a lot of my audience is my peers, my friends who run companies. They're successful people generally, like, they've made a lot of money. But they're probably asking, like, is there more? Like, I got the big house, I got the second house, I got the this, that, and they're like, it's kind of empty feeling, right? And it's a beautiful place to be because there's so much more than any of that stuff.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the things that where a lot of, I guess, Christians, be they Catholics or whatever, where we come to a definite agreement with, and I would say this is like one of the strongest things in the Bible, and especially in the New Testament, when Satan apparently appears before, I'll just call him Jesus for lack,
Yeah,
and after during the fast, when he's finishing his fast for the Passover, before Passover, and he says to Jesus, "Is it not written that if you throw yourself off of this mount, like Mount Sinai, and the angels of God will come and scoop you up before you basically stub one toe?" I mean, I'm paraphrasing. I don't know how originally transcribed in the original Hebrew or even in Latin. And Jesus's answer is really interesting. He says, "Yes, it is true." So then Satan says, "Well, then jump and prove it." And the answer that Jesus gives, or is accredited with giving, is it's I don't need to prove it to you. It's enough that I believe it, that I know it. Not believe, but that I know it. Because knowing is almost like being factual about how you feel. And he goes, it's enough that I know it. So, and I always thought about that. It's like, like somebody once said, right action needs no defense. When I was in AA. So when you get to the place where you think, no, whatever's going on for me right now with this particular knowing or belief, or
yeah,
starting out as a belief that becomes a knowing, um, you certainly you're at a place where it's like you've reached some kind of level. I don't know if you're at level 5, but you're above level 2 for sure. If you're so
yes,
comfortable with that,
yeah,
like I tell people, like I don't know when was the last time you rode a bicycle, but if you've ever ridden a bicycle in your life, if I gave you a bicycle today, do you say you believe you could ride it, or do you know you could ride it? The answer is I know I could ride it.
right.
So that's what attainment is like, is knowing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
when
It is
Jesus
a
said to
knowing it. I think that's a great word. I love that because it is. That's what it feels like inside.
yeah,
And
because
once
that's what
you have
Jesus
that,
says. He says it's
yeah,
enough that I know it. Anyway,
yeah.
God, you were going to say,
No, no. Once you have that knowingness and you have that inner love, you have it to give. You can give it to everyone. And
right.
it's not like you don't have discernment. I mean, there's people that are doing idiot things, and I mean, Jesus and Buddha said the same thing. All sin is ignorance.
Right.
They know not what they do, Father, right? So it's they just don't understand that they're not doing right, and they're just earlier in their journey than we are.
Well, I'd read somewhere the simplest definition for sin was simply to miss the mark,
Yeah,
just to miss the mark.
yeah,
I think it's like an
yeah,
archery term or something like that when you miss
yeah,
the.
yeah, for sure.
So,
Yeah.
I've missed the mark a lot of times in my life,
Listen,
and then
but look,
sometimes,
I love how we started, and you were talking about, you never let it get to your head as you became really successful actor, and the humility came through, and
humility, the state of
and
being teachable. Yeah.
yeah, and that's been my experience. Is the more I learn, the more I move up in whatever the numbers are. It doesn't really matter. You know that, oh, there's more above you. So just stay humble because you never know. Like, there's always more to learn. There's always higher levels of consciousness,
Oh
and
my God, is there ever?
the humility is what keeps us grounded.
Yeah. Yeah, so like basically with a series of British films, the Carry On movies, Carry On Regardless, Carry On
Yeah,
Nurse, Carry On Cleo. So it's like for me, it's like carry on regardless, just carry
yeah,
on until
yeah,
somebody comes along with a better idea.
absolutely. I'm
So
with you. Well, Tony, thank you, thank you, thank you. I so
thank
appreciate.
you. I had a great time. I mean,
Yeah, this is fun. And we'll get together in person sometime with Jack.
sure, I'd love to do that. I'd love to.
Yeah,
Where are you exactly? You're in Sedona?
I'm in Sedona. Yeah, you can kind of see it's a little bit. Uh,
Oh yeah, look at that. Jesus,
yeah,
red.
that's my out one of my windows. And yeah, I like to hike, and it's a great spiritual community. So it's
John
just,
Ford would have loved to have shot that stuff.
yeah, it's incredible. It's an amazing place. Come out anytime. Jack's been up here, and we hike and we meditate, and whatever. Like that's what we do. So it's good stuff. But I get to LA, fairly regularly. So we'll try to get all of us together and break some bread.
That would be wonderful.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
Okay, Smoke. Be well, man. God bless. I just